Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දසනකාන්ති චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight, by the book. Fuel issuance to 12 filling stations have been suspended following non-compliance to ministry prescribed guidelines. Bail. House of Court orders for the release of 16 suspects arrested during yesterday's inter-university students' protest. Detention orders received for 3 others. Friends in need. Australia announces additional emergency funding to the extent of 25 million Australian dollars. While Japan grants Sri Lanka with medical equipment worth 500 million Japanese yen. Reassurances. Indian Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar says India has helped Sri Lanka to the best of its ability and will naturally help with IMF negotiations. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Friday the 19th of August 2022.
Vim Deera milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now in your top story for tonight, Australia announced additional emergency funding of 25 million Australian dollars to Sri Lanka to help the country meet urgent food and healthcare needs. The Australian Foreign Ministry stated that the additional support brings Australia's official development assistance response to Sri Lanka to 75 million Australian dollars. Issuing a statement on additional humanitarian assistance to Sri Lanka, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong said it is in Australia's national interest to strengthen Sri Lanka's economic resilience and accelerate its recovery. The statement went on to say that Australia stands with the people of Sri Lanka, especially those experiencing severe hardship. The extra humanitarian assistance is in addition to the 23 million Australian dollars in ongoing development assistance to Sri Lanka in 2022 to 2023. Australia will provide $23 million in development assistance to Sri Lanka, and these contributions are in addition to $5 million recently provided to the United Nations agencies for Sri Lanka. The Australian Foreign Ministry added that their support will be delivered through UN agencies to provide food, health and nutrition services, access to safe water and essential support for those at risk, including women and children. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe was reassured of the United Nations commitment towards Sri Lanka's progress in health, education, food security and disaster risk education. The assurances were made by the UN delegation led by the Regional Director for Asia Pacific of the UN Development Coordination Office, David McLachlan-Carr, when he called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday. A delegation of United Nations officials led by Regional Director for Asia Pacific of the United Development Coordination Office, David McLachlan-Carr, called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. The discussion mainly focused on support extended by the United Nations to Sri Lanka in the current crisis. The UNDCO, Regional Director for Asia Pacific, has reiterated to President Ranil Wickremesinghe their commitment to working with the Sri Lankan government. The UNDCO Regional Director for Asia Pacific has reiterated to President Ranil Wickremesinghe their commitment to working with the Sri Lankan government to ensure coordinated UN emergency assistance and support early recovery in health, education, food, security and disaster risk education. The meeting was also joined by UN Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka Hannah Singer and Strategic Planner and Team Leader of Resident Coordinator's Office Andreas Kapati. The visit to Sri Lanka by UNDCO Regional Director for Asia Pacific McLachlan-Carr is focused on the launch of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2023 to 2027. The framework, which was launched in Colombo on Wednesday, will guide the work of all UN agencies in Sri Lanka over the next 5 years. Meanwhile, the UN delegation also met with Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena yesterday. During the meeting, they discussed on government coping strategies to preserve social services in health, education and agriculture across the island. McLachlan Carr has said that social protection is at the forefront of joint UN government efforts. Now the Japanese government granted medical equipment worth 500 million Japanese yen to the Sri Jayawardhanapura General Hospital to improve the hospital's treatment facilities. According to the Japanese embassy in Colombo, the improvement at the hospital will enhance the quality of care provided, especially to patients with non-communicable diseases.
Japan has provided modern Japanese medical equipment to the value of 500 million Japanese yen to the Sri Jayawardhanapura General Hospital to strengthen the hospital capabilities to combat non-communicable diseases and enhance the social and humanitarian development in Sri Lanka. Issuing a statement, the Japanese embassy in Colombo stated that Japanese Ambassador Hideaki Mizukoshi signed an exchange of note yesterday regarding the grant assistance. The grant was given in response to a request by the Sri Lankan government. The statement went on to say that Japan will provide the latest equipment such as CT angiography, catheter surgical equipment, transplantation devices, as well as establish a new dental ward to enhance treatment and surgical capabilities for non-communicable diseases including cancer, stroke and diabetes. The Japanese embassy went on to say that they hope the assistance will provide diagnosis and treatment of NCDs and help reduce related mortality and incidence in Sri Lanka, especially in the Western Province. Sri Jayawardhanapura General Hospital was constructed in the year 1983 with grant aid from the Japanese government as a token of appreciation and friendship to the then President of Sri Lanka, J.R. Jayawardena. The Japanese government mission statement went on to say that Japan will remain committed to help overcome this economic crisis in Sri Lanka together as a long-standing development partner of the country.
Now, Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India has helped Sri Lanka to the best of its ability. Dr. Jaishankar added that India will extend any help possible for Sri Lanka's negotiations with the International Monetary Fund.
While responding to a series of questions after delivering a lecture on India's vision of the Indo-Pacific at the Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said India had done the best of its abilities to assist Sri Lanka. He said this year alone, India extended support to the extent of $3.8 billion, including line of credit and swap arrangements. The Indian External Affairs Minister added that any help India can extend to Sri Lanka with the International Monetary Fund negotiations will be naturally given. Jaishankar's speech in Thailand focused on India's relations with China, which he termed was going through an extremely difficult phase. He went on to say that Sri Lanka is not necessarily the only reason if India and China have to come together, but there are many more reasons to do so, adding that it was in the own interest of India and China to join hands.
Stay with us for more news after this short break.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekar, announced today that fuel issuance to 12 filling stations that have failed to comply with the National Fuel Pass or QR code system have been suspended. The decision was taken at a preview meeting of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation Marketing Division held today, during which the implementation of the QR code system was evaluated. Accordingly, instructions were given to continuously monitor filling stations and to submit complaints sent by the general public to police stations, the minister further added. Now, the Sri Lankan Podujana Peramuna requested President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday to take measures to facilitate the return of former head of state Gotabaya Rajapaksa. SLPP parliamentarians had met the president for an official discussion last evening at the president's office on the matter. Expressing his views during the meeting, SLPP national organizer and former Minister Basil Rajapaksa said that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will provide its fullest support to the president to build the country by resolving the current economic crisis. In addition, he said that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa should be allowed to return to the island safely. He stated that this is the foremost request of the SLPP to the government and the president. Attending the discussion yesterday were parliamentarians Prasanna Ranatunga, Sagara Karyavasam, Rohitha Abegunawardana, Johnston Fernando, Pavitra Vanyarachi, Nama Rajapaksa and Sanjeeva Edirimana on behalf of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Now, the Criminal Investigation Department has recorded a statement from former President Maithripala Sirisena for nearly 5 hours today. The former president provided a statement with regard to the presidential pardon to Royal Park murder convict Jude Shamaravantha Jayamaha. In early November 2019, former President Sirisena pardoned and released the convict who was sentenced to death over the Royal Park murder case of 2005. The suspect was convicted of murdering 19-year-old Swedish national Yvonne Johnson on July 1, 2005 and was sentenced to 12 years in prison by the Colombo High Court. In 2012, the appeals court overturned the sentence and the suspect from 12 years to the death sentence. Later in October 2013, the Supreme Court confirmed the death sentence given by the appeals court to the suspect. Now, the Halsdorf Chief Magistrates Court today granted bail to 16 of the suspects arrested by the police during yesterday's Inter-University Student Federation protest in Colombo. However, IUSF convener Vasantha Mudalige, Galveva Sri Dharma Thera and Hasantha Chayavantha Gunatilaka are currently held under police detention orders. The Inter-University Students Federation carried out a protest in Colombo yesterday against the government. However, police arrested 19 including university students. Police media spokesperson SSP Nihal Talduva stated that the convener of the IUSF, Vasantha Mudalige, against whom an arrest warrant was pending, had been arrested by the police in the area of Fort after he had fled with another on a motorbike during the protest. Further, police stated that actor Jehan Apuhami had fled police custody. The police also stated that they had launched investigations into arresting the suspect and that they are carrying out investigations regarding why police officers were unable to prevent him from fleeing the custody. Meanwhile, 16 of the suspects that were arrested yesterday during the protest were produced before the Chief Magistrates Court in Halfdorf today. Slave Island police told the court that they had received intelligence that the IUSF protesters had planned to forcibly enter the Ministry of Finance and the Presidential Secretariat. The police requested court to remand the suspects until investigations into the information are concluded. Appearing on behalf of a suspect, President's counsel Salih Pires said the police were attempting to have the suspects remanded based on false information. President's counsel Pires stated that under the Constitution, the right to dissent is a fundamental right and that his clients had not engaged in any form of violence. Instead, he accused that it was the police that had acted violently during the protest. Meanwhile, appearing on behalf of another suspect, President's counsel Rienzi Arasekularatna stated that police had abused the law to arrest a group of suspects. In the meantime, the attorney appearing on behalf of Jehan Apuhami said that his client had been told by the Maradana police that there was no need of arresting him, following which he had left the police station. He informed the court that his client, Jehan Apuhami, had not fled police custody and that his client is ready to appear before the court at any given instance. Following this, the additional magistrate presiding over the case had issued a restraining order against Jehan Apuhami from travelling overseas after police had made a request in this regard. After considering the facts presented by both parties, the magistrate ordered for the release of 16 suspects on bail and announced that the case will once again be taken up on the 12th of September. In the meantime, police have obtained detention orders for 3 other suspects arrested during the protests yesterday, including convener of the IUSF Vasantha Mudalige, Galwavel Siridhamma Thera and Hashan Gunatilaka. They stated that they had obtained the detention orders in order to investigate events that elapsed on the 9th of April in relation to the protest. The police said that Vasantha Mudalige was detained and questioned under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Welcome back. Now, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka stated that the land value in Colombo district increased substantially in the first half of the year 2022. According to the Statistics Department of the Central Bank, the land valuation indicator for the Colombo district climbed to 186.9 with a year-on-year change of 17% during the first half of the year. The annual increase and the semi-annual increase 4.6% of the land valuation indicator showed deceleration of the increasing trend observed in the second half of 2021. All sub-indicators of the land valuation indicator, namely residential LVI, commercial LVI and industrial LVI, contributed to the overall increase. Industrial LVI recorded the highest annual increase of 20.6%, followed by commercial LVI and residential LVI. Now, the Colombo Stock Exchange rediscovered its losses and managed to extend the positive momentum yet another day, while plantation and hotel sectors rallied with the substantial gains fueling from bullish optimism. The index started off on a solid footing and maintained its steep upward trajectory for the first few minutes of the session, but experienced a brief dip afterwards as retailers continued to cut down margin positions on selected counters. Despite profit-taking, market recovered and climbed steadily throughout the remainder of the session before closing at 8,976, gaining 6.5 points. Turnover improved to 3.2 billion rupees. Food, beverage and tobacco and energy sectors continue to dominate the turnover throughout the week, while jointly contributing 43% to the market turnover. Foreign investors remain net buyers despite recording low participation, while JKH recorded the highest foreign inflow of 40.7 million rupees, leading the foreign buying for the fourth day. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.